The fast money clock on the family face-off does not stop. That is the whole point of it. It has run through sneezes, coughing fits, a contestant losing a shoe, and one memorable afternoon in 2014 when a fire alarm went off in the building and Ray Calloway kept asking questions over the top of it. 25 seconds is 25 seconds. But on a Wednesday afternoon in front of 200 people, with 9 seconds left on the board and $20,000 on the line, Ray Calloway held up his hand and told the control room to freeze that clock, and then he asked 200 strangers to say 4 words out loud, all together, to a 56-year-old woman from Meridian, Mississippi, who had said those same 4 words to other people about 40,000 times and had never once had them said back. Before we get into what she answered and why it wrecked that room, do us a quick favor and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, because a story about a woman who spent 27 years being a voice in the dark deserves to reach every person out there who has ever needed one. Now let me tell you about Letty Bascom. Arletta Bascom, everybody called her Letty, was 56 years old and had been a 911 dispatcher in Lauderdale County, Mississippi for 27 years. She was also completely blind and had been since she was 24. Letty was born with retinitis pigmentosa, which is a thing that takes your sight away slowly and on its own schedule. She could see fine as a little girl. By high school, her side vision was going, which is why she quit basketball, which she will still tell you was the great tragedy of her life, and which she is only about 40% joking about. By 22, she was down to a tunnel about the size of a drinking straw. By 24, it was gone. She got married at 23, right in the middle of all that, to Curtis Bascom, who drove a septic pump truck for a living for 31 years and who has the single best sense of humor about it of any man alive. He proposed to her in a Waffle House parking lot. She said, and I am quoting her here, "I couldn't see him, but I could hear he was serious." They had 2 kids. Simone, 30, who taught high school chemistry over in Newton County, and Tremaine, 27, who worked for the city and had never once in his life won an argument with his mother. Now here is the part of Letty Bascom's life that matters most. When she lost her sight completely at 24, she went through about 2 years that she describes as sitting down. That is the only phrase she uses for it. She sat down in her mother's house and she did not get up much, and Curtis went to work every day and came home every night and did not push her. And eventually she got up on her own, the way people mostly do. What got her up was a phone call, not a special one. Her cousin's little boy fell off a porch and split his chin open, and Letty was the one in the house. And Letty was the one who called 911, and a woman on the other end of that line talked her through it, calm as anything, and stayed with her until the ambulance turned onto the street. And Letty Bascom sat there on that porch afterward and thought, that woman never saw one thing that happened here. She did all of that with her ears. She started training 18 months later. And that is the thing people got wrong about Letty for 27 years. They thought she overcame something to do that job. She would tell you flat out that she did not. She would tell you that in a dispatch center, everybody is blind. Nobody in that room can see the wreck. Nobody can see the kitchen fire or the man on the bathroom floor. Every dispatcher in America is working off nothing but a voice in their ear, and Letty Bascom had spent 30 years of her life learning how to get every single thing out of a voice that a voice will give you. She was not good at that job despite anything. She was the best one on that floor, and everybody in Lauderdale County knew it. She could hear a stroke. That is not a figure of speech. She could hear the specific droop in a caller's speech before that caller knew anything was wrong, and she had flagged it enough times that the paramedics down there stopped questioning her. She could tell you if the man on the line was alone in the house or if somebody else was standing in the room. She could tell you the difference between a person who is panicking and a person who is going into shock, which sound almost identical to everyone else on Earth and which require completely different things from you. And she had a thing she said. Every call, every time, first thing, before she asked a single question. I'm right here. Not calm down. Not what's your emergency. She said, I'm right here. and she said it in a voice that Curtis says could talk a cat out of a tree, and then she went to work. 27 years. Somewhere around 40,000 calls. Curtis will tell you what that costs, because she won't. He will tell you that for 27 years he did not ask her about her shift when she came in the door, because he learned early that the question was a door she had to decide to open herself. He will tell you that some nights she came home and went straight out to the porch and sat there in the dark, which for her was the same as sitting anywhere, which is a joke she made about it exactly once, in 2004, and never again. There were maybe 9 nights in 27 years that she brought home. He can list them. He will not. One of them the family does talk about, because Simone was in the house for it. It was a Thursday in the spring, and there had been a wreck out on the highway, and Letty had a woman on the line for a long time, and by the end of it the woman on the other end had stopped answering. That is a specific thing that happens in that job. The call does not end. Nobody hangs up. There is just an open line and a room somewhere with nobody talking in it, and you have to sit there in your headset and keep saying a person's name into it, out loud, alone, because there is a chance, and you do not get to decide when there isn't. Letty came home that night and did not eat, and did not go to bed. She sat at the kitchen table with the light off, which she never bothered turning on anyway, and Simone, who was maybe 15, came down at 2 in the morning and found her mother there and did not know what to do, so she just sat down across from her. And after a long time Letty said, "I stayed on." That was it. That was the whole conversation. Simone Bascom is 30 years old now, and she says that is the single most important thing anybody has ever said to her. The family face-off came into it because it was the only television in that house that Letty actually followed. Everything else on TV she called people doing things quietly. But a game show is all talking. It is 100 people's answers read out loud. She had listened to that show for 30-some years, and something happened in that time that nobody in her family clocked until much later. She got unbelievably good at it. She had never seen the board. Not once, not one time in her life. But she had heard about 250,000 survey answers come out of a television speaker over 3 decades. And if you want to know what 100 ordinary Americans are going to say about anything, that is the education. Curtis says she would call the #1 answer from the kitchen, out of the room with the water running, and be right so consistently that he stopped finding it impressive and started finding it a little irritating. Simone put the family in for the show as a Christmas present. Letty said absolutely not for about 4 months. Then she said fine. The team was Letty, Curtis, Simone, Tremaine, and Curtis's cousin Deb Ann Pruitt Bascom, who was 52 and who talked more than the other 4 combined. They flew to Atlanta in March. Letty's guide dog, a yellow lab named Biscuit, came along and spent the entire taping asleep in a chair in the wings, which the crew found funnier than anything that happened on stage. Across from them stood the Vandergrifts of Naperville, Illinois, nice family. Genuinely nice. And that is worth saying up front, because of what happened with the son. Chip Vandergrift was 34, and he was not a bad man. He was the other thing. He was the kind of person who has decided in advance to be wonderful about something, and who then goes about being wonderful about it at you, at volume whether you asked or not. From the second he saw Letty come out with her cane, Chip Vandergrift got busy. He applauded her walking to the podium. He announced to the room that this is what it's all about, folks. When Ray put up the first question, Chip read the board out loud for her, loudly, across the entire stage, unprompted, twice. Between rounds he asked her if she needed him to explain how the buzzer worked. Letty Bascom handled it exactly the way you would expect a woman who has done 27 years of night shift on a 9111 console to handle it. Which is to say she used him for target practice for about 90 minutes. The first time he read the board to her she said, "Baby, they say them out loud. That's the whole show." The second time she said, Chip, I'm blind, I'm not new." And the third time, when he leaned over and asked if she wanted him to describe the studio, she said, "I've heard your suit. That's enough for me." And 200 people came apart, and Ray Calloway had to put the cards down on the podium and walk in a small circle, and even the Vandergrifts were laughing at their own boy, and Chip, to his eternal credit, laughed too and mostly quit after that. That is the tone of the first hour of that taping. It is genuinely one of the funniest hours that show ever put on tape. And I want you to hold on to that, because of where this goes. There is one more piece of it worth telling, because it is the closest anybody got to the truth before the truth came out. Somewhere in the third round, Ray asked the whole stage a throwaway question between cards, one of those things he does to fill time while they reset the board. He asked what the strangest thing was that anybody at either podium had ever done at work. The Vandergrifts had some good ones. Deb Ann Pruitt-Bascom gave an answer that had to be cut for broadcast. Curtis said, "I'd have to think about which one," and got a laugh that ran 20 seconds. Then Ray got to Letty, and she said, "I've talked a man through delivering a baby in a Buick." The audience whooped. Ray said, "You have not." "Twice," she said. "Different men. Same road." And the room came apart, and Ray moved on to the next card, and nobody in that building, not the host, not 200 people, not the producers up in the booth, stopped for 1 second to ask what kind of job puts a woman on the phone with a man in a Buick at 2 in the morning. They laughed and they moved on, which is what everybody has always done with Letty Bascom, because she is funny and because she wants you to. Ray came down the line early and asked what everybody did. Curtis said, "I pump septic tanks," and let it sit there, and got the biggest laugh of the introductions. Deb Ann said she was between things, and Letty said, "I take 911 calls." Ray said, "For how long?" and Letty said, "A while." That is all he got. He tried 3 more times over the course of that afternoon, in the way Ray Calloway does, and she gave him nothing every single time. She deflected with a joke on all 3 attempts. Later, people asked her why she would not talk about it, and her answer was the most Letty Bascom answer in the world. "Because I came to play a game," she said. "I did not come to be a lesson." The Bascoms took the game by 90 points, and it was not close, and it was mostly her. Letty was in the top 2 answers on the board 7 times out of 9. At one point, Ray stopped and said, "Ma'am, how are you doing this?" And she said, "I've been listening to y'all since 1991. And he said, "Listening?" And she said, "That's the only way I've ever done it." And something moved across that man's face right there, about an hour before he understood it. Then came fast money. Simone went first and put up 109 points, which is respectable and which she was furious about. That left 91 for her mother, alone, on a 25-second clock. Letty walked out to center stage with her cane folded in her hand, found the podium, set her hands flat on it, and said, "All right. Where's the man?" Ray said, "I'm right here." And Letty Bascom said, "Huh, that's my line." Nobody in that building knew yet what she meant. Ray laughed and started the clock. The questions came at her and she came right back. Name something you can tell about a person from their voice. If they're lying. Name something people always say on the telephone. Are you still there? Name a job where you never see the person you're helping. Mine, 22 points, 31 points, and then 41 points on that third one, and the studio was up out of the seats because the number was climbing fast. Fourth question. Ray read it off the card. Name something you would want somebody to say to you on the worst day of your life. Now there are answers to that. 100 strangers in a mall said I love you, and it's going to be okay, and I'm sorry, and you're not alone. All of those are on that board. Any one of them scores. And Letty Bascom, without 1/2 second of hesitation, said, "I'm right here." The clock had 9 seconds left on it. And behind her, at that podium, her son Tremaine, 27 years old, who had never won an argument with his mother in his life, said out loud, not meaning to, in a voice that the boom mic caught clean, "That's what she says. That's what she says to everybody." Ray Calloway turned around and looked at that family. Then he raised his hand at the control booth and said 4 words that had never been said on that stage. "Stop the clock." Now, the clock froze at 9 seconds. The band stopped. 200 people had no idea what was happening, and the producers in the booth had no idea what was happening, and Ray Calloway walked over to that family podium and said, "Son, say that again." And Tremaine Bascom told the room about his mother. He told them she had worked a 911 console in Lauderdale County. Mississippi for 27 years. He told them about 40,000 calls, give or take, because his sister had done the arithmetic once. He told them she says the same thing at the start of every single one, not calm down, not what's your emergency, but I'm right here, and that she has been saying it into a headset in the dark since before he was born. Then he said the part that broke that studio open. She's the last voice a lot of people ever heard, he said, and the first one a lot of people heard on the worst day of their life, and not one of them ever saw her face. Not one. They don't know what she looks like, they don't know her name, they've got no idea she can't see either. He was losing it now. She's been in the dark on both ends of that line for 27 years, and she's never once mentioned it to anybody. Ray Calloway stood at center stage with a card in his hand, and did not say anything for a while. Then he walked back over to Letty, who was still at that podium with her hands flat on it, and he said, "Mrs. Bascom, why wouldn't you tell me?" And Letty said, "Because everybody wants to make it about the eyes. It's not about the eyes. Anybody can do that job blind. Everybody in that room is blind." She lifted her chin a little. "It's about staying on the line. That's the whole job. Anybody can pick up. Staying on is the job." That is when Ray Calloway did the thing. He turned to the audience and he said, "Folks, I'm going to ask you for something, and I need you to do it right." He explained it first. He said that when a room wants to honor somebody, a room claps. That is what we have. 200 people clap, and the person sees 200 people on their feet, and that is how it gets across. But she's not going to see that, Ray said. So clapping is for us. Clapping is not for her. He put his hand on the corner of that podium. This woman has given 4 words to about 40,000 people who could not see her. Nobody ever gave them back. So we're not going to clap. He asked them to say it. All of them. Together. Out loud. 4 words. He told them how he wanted it done too, and this is the part people rewatch. He said, "Don't yell it at her. This is not a cheer." He said, "Say it the way you'd say it to somebody sitting on the floor of a bathroom at 3 in the morning. That's who's been getting it from her for 27 years. Say it like that." He counted it down, and 200 strangers in a television studio in Atlanta, Georgia said, in one voice, to a 56-year-old woman from Meridian, Mississippi, "I'm right here." The sound engineer, a man who has been mixing that show since it started, said afterward that in every other big moment on that stage, the meter goes up and then it comes down. This one did not come down. Because they did not stop. Somebody said it again, and then the whole room said it again, and it went on for a long time, 200 people saying "I'm right here," over and over. At a woman standing alone at a podium with her hands flat on it. Letty Bascom stood there and took it, and did not cover her face, and did not sit down, and cried harder than anybody has ever cried on that stage, while standing completely still. Curtis came out from the podium and put his hand on her back, and she said something to him that the microphone did not get. And he laughed and wiped his face at the same time, and later somebody asked him what she said. He said she said, "They're loud." They restarted the clock at 9 seconds. Last question. Ray read it with his voice in pieces. "Name something you hope you never have to hear." And Letty said, "Silence on the other end." The buzzer went. The board turned over. If they're lying, 22. Are you still there? 31. Mine, for the job where you never see who you're helping. 41, and the studio hollered, "I'm right here," and it came up at 38 points, the number 2 answer on the board, and Simone Bascom screamed loud enough to peak the audio. They were at 132. She needed 91. It was already over. The last answer did not matter one bit, and every person in that building watched it turn over anyway. Silence on the other end. 14 points. 146. $20,000. Here is what happened after. The clip is called "I'm Right Here," and it has been watched 112 million times. It did not spread the way the funny ones spread. It spread through people who do that job. Dispatch centers all over this country started sharing it internally within about 4 days, and then it got out. There is a thing about 911 dispatchers that most people never think about. And that episode made a lot of people think about it for the first time. They are not counted as first responders in a lot of places. They do not get the same recognition, or in many cases the same support, as the people who arrive. They sit in a dark room for 12 hours and take the worst moment of a stranger's life directly into their ear, 40 or 50 times a shift, and then they go home. Advocacy groups had been pushing on that classification for years with almost no public attention. They got attention after that. A lot of it. Whether it moved anything is a fight that is still going on, but for about 2 months in that country, people were talking about the person on the phone instead of the person in the truck, and Letty Bascom got asked to speak about it more times than she agreed to. Lauderdale County threw her a thing at the county building that she has described as a nightmare, but a nice one. Her whole floor came. The sheriff came. 3 people came who had called her. That is the part she talks about. 3 people over the years had tracked her down and thanked her, which almost never happens, because callers do not get names. One was a woman whose husband had a heart attack in a driveway in 2009. One was a man who had been 19 and drunk and on a bridge in 2016. And Letty kept him on that line for 51 minutes until somebody got to him, and he came back 7 years later and shook her hand and let her feel his wedding ring. She has never told the third story to anybody, and she has asked people to stop asking. What she will say about all 3 of them is the same sentence, and she says it a little impatiently. Like she is tired of people missing the point. She says, "They think they came to thank me. They came so I'd know how it turned out." Because that is the thing about that job that nobody outside of it understands. A dispatcher almost never finds out. The call ends, the next one comes in, and whatever happened in that house after the trucks pulled up is simply not information she will ever be given. 27 years, 40,000 calls, and Letty Bascom knows the ending of maybe a few dozen of them. The $20,000 went about how you would expect. Some to Simone's classroom, which had been buying its own supplies, some to a fence, and a chunk of it to the training fund at her own dispatch center, anonymously, which she was extremely annoyed to have found out about later. Because Curtis told somebody. Letty retired last year at 58, 28 years and change on the console. She did not want a party and she did not get one. Because her floor knew her. What they did instead was let her work her last shift like any other shift, straight through, no announcements. She took 19 calls that night. 2 of them were serious. One was a man who could not find his wife's medication, and mostly needed somebody to talk to him while he looked, and Letty stayed on that line for 11 minutes over a bottle that was in a cabinet the whole time. And she has said that is a perfectly good way to end a career. On her last call, she pulled her headset down. And every dispatcher in that room, all 9 of them on shift, said it together. "I'm right here." She says that one was worse than the television one. She says she had to be walked out to the car. Chip Vandergrift of Naperville, Illinois, for what it is worth, called her about a month after the episode aired, having gotten the number through the show, and apologized for the whole afternoon. Letty told him he did not need to apologize for being an idiot on television, because half the country does it. Then she talked to him for an hour. They still talk. He sends her a message every year on the anniversary of the taping, and it always says the same 4 words, and she always writes back, "Still here. Baby." Ray Calloway was asked about stopping that clock. And he gave an answer that people have quoted a lot since. "Everybody thinks the hard part is showing up," he said. It isn't. Anybody can show up for the big thing one time. That woman picked up a phone 40,000 times and stayed on the line while people she'd never see went through the worst thing that ever happened to them. And then she got up and did it again the next night for 27 years. He shrugged. "I've got a clock on my show. I've never had a better reason to stop it. If this story got to you the way it got to everybody in that studio, do 2 things before you go. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this with a dispatcher, a nurse, a night shift anybody. One of those people who does the hardest work in the world with nobody watching and no way to be thanked. And second, take the 4 words. That is what Letty Bascom spent 27 years proving. You almost never have the right thing to say to somebody who is going through it, and you do not need it. You do not have to fix anything. You do not have to know anything. You just have to pick up, and then you have to stay on the line, and if you can say one thing while you're there, say the only sentence that has ever actually helped anybody. I'm right here.